If your belly feels hard, bloated, or refuses to shrink even when you're trying, this is why. There's a type of belly fat you cannot grab, you cannot pinch, and you cannot target with crunches. It's called visceral fat. It wraps around your liver, pancreas, and intestines like insulation, quietly driving fatty liver, insulin resistance, diabetes, and heart disease. And here's what most people never hear. You can gain the same amount of weight as someone else, but store double the visceral fat based purely on food choices, not motivation, not willpower, biochemistry. I'm Afsoon, a physician assistant in primary care, and today I'll show you 5 food swaps that stop visceral fat from stacking and make fat loss easier without living on salads and sadness. Stay until the last swap, because it's the simplest one to change and it can make a measurable difference fast. If this kind of science-based breakdown helps you, like the video, subscribe, and let's start. And 2 people ate the same extra calories every day, and one of them ended up with far more dangerous belly fat. Same food amount, same weight gain, completely different outcome. Researchers ran a controlled overfeeding study on healthy adults. Participants were asked to eat extra daily calories on top of their normal diet. The calories didn't come from random junk food. They came from structured, real meals designed by researchers. Everyone ate the same number of extra calories. Everyone gained about the same amount of weight. Here's where it changed. One group's extra calories came mostly from saturated fat-heavy foods. Think meals built around things like butter, cream, cheese, and fatty cuts of meat. In real-life terms, this looked like foods similar to cheesy, buttery meals, cream-based sauces, fatty red meat dishes. The other group ate the same number of calories, but their extra calories came mostly from polyunsaturated fats. Think foods made with fats from fish, nuts, seeds, and plant-based oils. After several weeks, researchers didn't just look at the scale. They looked at where the fat went. And what they found surprised a lot of people. The group eating more saturated, fat-heavy foods stored significantly more visceral fat, the type of fat that wraps around organs like the liver and pancreas. They also accumulated more fat inside the liver, which is a major driver of insulin resistance and fatty liver disease. The other group, same calories, same weight gain, but less dangerous fat storage and better metabolic outcomes. This is where most people get misled by the scale. 2 people can eat the same amount, gain the same weight, look similar in clothes, but internally, one body is storing fat in a way that raises disease risk, while the other is not. So no, it's not just calories in versus calories out. Calories influence weight. Food composition influences where fat is stored. And visceral fat is the kind you never want your body prioritizing. This does not mean saturated fat is automatically bad or that it must be eliminated forever. What it does mean is this: when visceral fat is already high, labs show fatty liver or rising A1C. Belly fat doesn't respond to calorie control. The types of foods providing those calories matter far more than people are told, especially during active fat loss phases. And here's where this gets even more important, because there's one type of sugar that's been shown to drive visceral fat even faster than fat itself. Think of this as a ladder, not a rule book. Some foods block fat loss, some are neutral, some support metabolism, and some give you the biggest return. You don't need perfection, you just need to keep moving up. Some foods block fat loss, some are neutral, some support metabolism, and some give you the biggest return. At the bottom of the ladder are foods I call avoid. These are the ones that actively block fat loss. The next level is approved. They're okay, but they don't really move you forward. Then you have better foods. These support your metabolism and make fat loss easier. And at the top are the best choices. These give you the biggest return for your effort. Here's the problem no one explains clearly. Your liver is not a sugar buffet. It's a processing plant, and it has limits. When you eat glucose, your body shares the workload. Muscles use it, cells use it. Some get stored, but fructose is different. Fructose goes almost straight to the liver. Your muscles can't use it. Your brain can't use it. The liver gets stuck doing all the work. Now imagine this happening all day long. Sweeteners like high fructose corn syrup and agave dump large amounts of fructose into the liver repeatedly. The liver can't burn it fast enough, so it does the only thing it can do. It turns it into fat. That fat gets stored inside the liver first, leading to fatty liver. Once the liver is congested with fat, it stops responding properly to insulin. That's insulin resistance. A fatty, stressed liver releases more glucose into the blood, raises insulin levels, blocks fat burning, pushes fat toward the belly and organs. So even if calories aren't crazy high, your body shifts into fat storage mode. This is why people say, I don't eat that much, but my belly won't move. Now let's talk about sucralose and aspartame. They don't contain calories, but they still activate sweet taste receptors, trigger insulin signaling in many people, confuse hunger and fullness hormones. Your brain thinks sugar is coming, it doesn't arrive. So later, hunger rebounds harder. That cycle keeps insulin elevated, and when insulin is high, fat burning is off. Different mechanism, same metabolic trap. When the liver is overwhelmed, fat loss is impossible. That's the common thread. If you have fatty liver, prediabetes, diabetes, PCOS, stubborn belly fat, your liver needs less stimulation, not smarter sweeteners. And if you're pregnant, have IBS, or get bloating or cramping from sweeteners, the safest move is simple. Reduce all sweetness and let your system reset. Once you understand how sweeteners stress the liver, fruit suddenly makes a lot more sense. Because not all sugar hits the liver the same way. This is where people get tripped up. Approved does not mean helpful, and best does not mean unlimited. Raw honey and maple syrup are natural and less processed. That's why they're approved. But here's the catch. They're still sugar, and they still raise insulin. And when insulin goes up, fat burning turns off. So during active fat loss, especially belly fat, these don't move you forward. They're not bad. They're just not for right now. Monk fruit and stevia, when pure, don't significantly spike blood sugar or insulin. That's why they're better tools during fat loss. But here's the rule. Best doesn't mean more. Too much sweetness, even without calories, keeps cravings alive and slows appetite reset. If you're pregnant, have IBS, or notice GI symptoms, minimize all sweetness and let your system reset. Approved is for maintenance. Best is a tool. Less sweetness usually works better than smarter sweetness. Most people think sugar is sugar. Your body does not agree. Fructose is processed almost entirely in the liver, not your muscles. Not where you burn energy, your liver. And when the liver gets too much fructose, it does three things. It turns it into fat. It stores that fat around your organs, and it worsens insulin resistance. That's why belly fat is so stubborn. Now, this does not mean fruit is bad. It means some fruits behave very differently during fat loss. During active fat loss, I tell patients to avoid or strictly limit bananas, grapes, dried fruit, and fruit juice. Juice is the worst. No fiber, no chewing. Just a fructose hit straight to the liver. Some fruits are okay in moderation. Kiwi, tomatoes, and grapefruit. Quick note. Grapefruit can interact with certain medications, so always check. Better choices? Green apples, lemons, and limes. And the best options for fat loss are berries and avocado. Yes, avocado is a fruit. Low sugar, high fiber, or fat. Much better insulin response. Now here's the part most people don't hear. In controlled research, fructose-sweetened drinks increased visceral belly fat and worsened insulin sensitivity more than glucose, even at similar calorie intake. That means soda, sweet tea, fruit juice, and healthy smoothies are quietly working against you. This isn't about cutting fruit forever. It's about choosing fruits that don't overload your liver while you're trying to lose fat. Fix the liver signal, the belly fat follows. Carbohydrates are probably the most misunderstood nutrient in modern nutrition. They've been blamed for obesity, diabetes, inflammation, fatigue, and basically every bad thing that's happened since the internet discovered the word insulin. But here's the truth. Carbs are not the enemy, and cutting them to zero is not the solution for most people. The real issue is how different carbs behave once they enter your body. Your metabolism doesn't read nutrition labels. It responds to speed, structure, and context. Carbs digest slowly, stabilize blood sugar, and keep appetite under control. Others spike glucose rapidly, trigger insulin surges, and then leave you hungrier than before you ate. That cycle is what drives cravings, not carbs themselves. Let's start with the ones I consistently tell patients to avoid during fat loss: white bread, refined pasta, most boxed cereals, these are highly processed carbohydrates. They've been stripped of fiber and structural complexity, so when you eat them, your body breaks them down fast. Blood sugar rises quickly, insulin follows, then comes the crash. And that crash isn't just uncomfortable. It triggers hunger hormones, cravings, and reward-seeking behavior. This is why people say things like, "I just ate and I'm already hungry again." It's not a lack of willpower, it's physiology. Now, this is where nuance matters. Whole wheat products, sourdough bread, oats, brown rice, these are approved, not unlimited. Why? Because they contain fiber, intact grain structure, and slower digestion. Sourdough deserves special mention. Fermentation reduces the glycemic response and improves mineral absorption. This has been shown repeatedly in metabolic and gut health research. Same calories, different blood sugar response. Portion size still matters here, but these carbs don't hit your system like a sugar rush. Now we step into metabolically smarter carbs, sprouted grains. Lentil or chickpea-based pastas. Sprouting changes how grains behave. It reduces anti-nutrients, improves digestibility, and lowers post-meal glucose spikes. Legume-based pastas are especially interesting. Research shows they raise blood sugar more slowly, increase satiety, improve insulin response compared to refined wheat pasta. Same comfort food category, very different metabolic outcome. And now the best tools when fat loss is the goal. Cauliflower rice, zucchini noodles, spaghetti squash, legumes. These foods do something extremely important. They give you volume without glucose overload. You feel full. Your plate looks satisfying. Your blood sugar stays stable. That stability is what reduces cravings later in the day. And legumes deserve respect here. They're carbohydrates, yes, but they come packaged with fiber, protein, and resistant starch. That combination slows digestion and improves insulin sensitivity over time. Here's the myth that keeps people stuck. You need 0 carbs to lose fat. You don't. What you need is to avoid rapid glucose spikes followed by insulin crashes. Recent metabolic research shows fat gain is driven less by carbs themselves and more by how quickly glucose enters the bloodstream and how often insulin is forced to respond. Control the spike. You control appetite. Control appetite. Fat loss becomes sustainable. This is not about restriction for the sake of restriction. It's about choosing carbs that digest slowly, keep insulin stable, reduce cravings, support long-term metabolic health. You're not failing because you eat carbs. You're struggling because you were taught to treat all carbs as the same. They're not. And once you understand that, the rest of this process gets a lot easier. Now that you understand how carbs actually affect blood sugar and cravings, the next question is obvious. How do you combine carbs with protein and fat to keep insulin stable all day? That's exactly what we're covering next. They've been stripped of fiber and structural complexity, so when you eat them, your body breaks them down fast. Blood sugar rises quickly, insulin follows, then comes the crash. And that crash isn't just uncomfortable. It triggers hunger hormones, cravings, and reward-seeking behavior. This is why people say things like, "I just ate and I'm already hungry again." It's not a lack of willpower, it's physiology. Now, this is where nuance matters. Whole wheat products, sourdough bread, oats, brown rice. These are approved, not unlimited. Why? Because they contain fiber, intact grain structure, and slower digestion. Sourdough deserves special mention. Fermentation reduces the glycemic response and improves mineral absorption. This has been shown repeatedly in metabolic and gut health research. Same calories. Different blood sugar response. Portion size still matters here, but these carbs don't hit your system like a sugar rush. Seed oils are one of the most confusing and controversial topics in nutrition right now. And honestly, that's not because the science is unclear, it's because the internet turned nuance into tribal warfare. So let's slow this down and actually explain it. Seed oils are everywhere. Not because they're magical, but because they're cheap, shelf-stable, and heavily processed. Most people are not eating a little seed oil. They're eating seed oils all day, every day, without realizing it. That's where the problem starts. Seed oils are extracted from seeds that contain very little natural oil. That requires high heat, chemical solvents, and multiple refining steps. The end result is an oil that is high in omega-6 fatty acids, is very easy to overconsume, is rarely eaten in isolation. Omega-6 fats are not inherently bad, you need them. But the issue is dose and balance. Modern diets already contain excessive omega-6 intake, while omega-3 intake stays low. That imbalance is associated with increased inflammation signaling, especially in people with insulin resistance or metabolic disease. Again, not poison, but context matters. These are the oils I tell patients to limit or avoid frequently, especially during fat loss or metabolic reset: safflower oil, grapeseed oil, sunflower oil, unless clearly labeled high oleic, corn oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil, highly processed canola oil. These oils are highly refined, easy to oxidize when heated, commonly used in ultra-processed foods. Most exposure doesn't come from cooking at home. It comes from restaurant food, packaged snacks, sauces, and dressings. That's why people struggle even when they eat clean. Now let's talk about better choices, not extremes. Olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. Olive oil is one of the most studied fats in nutrition science, but quality matters. Many olive oils on shelves are diluted, oxidized, or mislabeled. Cold-pressed, extra virgin, properly stored oils matter. Avocado oil has a higher smoke point and a more stable fat profile for cooking. Coconut oil is mostly saturated fat and more heat stable, though it should still be used intentionally, not mindlessly. These fats are more stable and easier to control. For many people, especially those focused on satiety and stable blood sugar, these fats can be very effective. Butter, ghee, tallow, especially when sourced from higher quality producers. These fats are sakitstwe, heat stable, satis, less prone to oxidation. Very satiating. They tend to reduce constant grazing because fat slows digestion and stabilizes appetite. This does not mean unlimited amounts, and it does not mean everyone should switch overnight. This part matters, so listen carefully. If you have high LDL cholesterol, a history of heart disease, strong family risk, or complex metabolic conditions, your fat strategy should be individualized. This is not a one-size-fits-all situation. Extreme internet diets that demonize entire fat groups or push massive saturated fat intake without context can backfire. Nutrition is not about ideology. It's about physiology, labs, risk factors, and sustainability. Talk to your clinician. Adjust gradually. Monitor real data. Seed oils aren't toxic overnight. They're problematic because they're invisible, overused, and unbalanced. Most people don't need perfection. They need awareness and reduction, not fear. When you reduce ultra-processed oils and choose more stable fats, appetite regulation improves, inflammation signaling often decreases, and fat loss becomes easier to sustain. Not because of magic, because biology prefers stability. Now that you understand fats, carbs, and how processed foods quietly affect appetite, the next question is obvious. How do you put this together into real meals without obsessing? Most people focus obsessively on food, calories, carbs, fat, protein, and then they completely ignore what they're drinking all day. That's a mistake, because what you drink doesn't just hydrate you. It affects blood sugar, the appetite, stress hormones, and even how your liver handles fat. So let's break this down properly. First, the drinks that quietly sabotage fat loss and metabolic health. Soda, diet soda, energy drinks, sweetened coffees. Regular soda is obvious. Liquid sugar hits fast, spikes glucose, and bypasses normal fullness signals. Diet soda is more complicated. Even without calories, artificial sweeteners can increase insulin response in some people, increase cravings, and reinforce sweet taste dependence. Energy drinks combine caffeine, sweeteners, and stimulants. They stress the nervous system and worsen sleep quality, which directly impacts fat loss. Sweetened coffees are the sleeper problem. People think they're just coffee, but once you add syrups, creamers, and flavoring, you're drinking dessert before noon. Now let's talk about neutral, everyday choices. Unsweetened teas, sparkling water, unsweetened nut milks. These hydrate without spiking blood sugar. One important patient education point: nut milks are not all created equal. Many contain added sugars, seed oils, gums, and emulsifiers. Always check ingredients. Short ingredient list, no sweeteners, no surprises. Now we move into drinks that actually support metabolism. Green tea, black coffee. Green tea contains catechins that improve insulin sensitivity and fat oxidation. This isn't influencer science, it's well-documented metabolic research. Black coffee without sugar or flavored creamers improves alertness and can enhance fat mobilization in many people. The key is moderation and timing. Too late in the day, caffeine disrupts sleep, and poor sleep increases insulin resistance the next day. The drinks that work with your physiology: lemon water, bone broth, collagen coffee, liver support teas. Lemon water supports hydration and digestion without glucose spikes. Bone broth provides electrolytes, amino acids, and helps curb appetite without stressing blood sugar. Collagen coffee, when done correctly, adds protein and slows caffeine absorption, which can stabilize energy and reduce crashes. Liver support teas like dandelion, milk thistle blends, or ginger-based teas support bile flow and digestion. Not detox magic, just gentle support for an organ that works non-stop. Here's the connection most people miss: liquid calories and sweetened drinks don't trigger fullness properly. Spike insulin faster. Increase visceral fat storage. Reinforce cravings. Meanwhile, stable hydration improves appetite regulation. Reduces false hunger. Supports fat metabolism. Improves energy and focus. This is why people say, "I'm eating better, but nothing's changing." They fixed food. They ignored drinks. This isn't about perfection. It's about defaults. If your default drink is sweet, flavored, or stimulating all day long, your metabolism never gets a break. Shift the default. Most of the day should be neutral or supportive drinks. Sweetened or stimulating drinks become occasional, not automatic. And when you fix hydration, appetite often improves without effort. One of the simplest, most reliable ways to reduce appetite is not willpower, it's protein. When people increase protein intake, something interesting happens. They don't just eat less because they're trying harder, they eat less because their biology tells them to. In a classic metabolic study, researchers increased protein intake while keeping everything else the same. Participants were not told to restrict calories. They were not dieting. And yet, appetite dropped. Calorie intake decreased spontaneously. And weight loss followed. That's important because it tells us this wasn't discipline. It was physiology. Protein affects hunger differently than carbs or fats. When you eat protein, it increases satiety hormones like GLP-1 and peptide YY, reduces ghrelin, the hormone that drives hunger, slows gastric emptying, requires more energy to digest. That combination sends a powerful signal to the brain: we've had enough. This is why a protein-rich meal can keep you full for hours. One of the simplest, most reliable ways to reduce appetite is not willpower, it's protein. When people increase protein intake, something interesting happens. They don't just eat less because they're trying harder. They eat less because their biology tells them to. In a classic metabolic study, researchers increased protein intake while keeping everything else the same. Participants were not told to restrict calories. They were not dieting. And yet, appetite dropped. Calorie intake decreased spontaneously, and weight loss followed. That's important because it tells us this wasn't discipline. It was physiology. Protein affects hunger differently than carbs or fats. When you eat protein, it increases satiety hormones like GLP-1 and peptide YY, reduces ghrelin, the hormone that drives hunger, slows gastric emptying, requires more energy to digest. That combination sends a powerful signal to the brain: we've had enough. This is why a protein-rich meal can keep you full for hours, while a carb-heavy meal often leaves you hungry again quickly. Protein doesn't just make you full in the moment, it reduces how much you eat later. People naturally snack less. Portions shrink without effort. Cravings calm down. That's what researchers mean by spontaneous calorie reduction. You didn't count, you didn't restrict, you just weren't hungry. That's the holy grail of sustainable fat loss. Most diets fail because they rely on constant hunger. Hunger increases stress hormones. Stress worsens insulin resistance. Insulin resistance makes fat loss harder. Protein interrupts that cycle. Higher protein intake helps. Preserve lean muscle. Maintain metabolic rate. Stabilize blood sugar. Reduce late day and nighttime eating. That's why protein is especially important during fat loss. Lose fat, keep muscle, stay sane. This does not mean extreme protein diets. More is not always better. For most adults, protein intake should be spread across meals, matched to body size and activity, paired with fiber and healthy fats. Protein works best as a foundation, not a replacement for everything else. And for patients with kidney disease or specific medical conditions, protein targets should be individualized with a clinician. If you're constantly hungry, it's not a character flaw, it's a signal. Increasing protein is one of the most evidence-based ways to reduce appetite, lower calorie intake naturally, support fat loss without obsession. You don't need to fight hunger. You need to design meals that silence it. At this point, you understand something most people never do. Fat loss isn't about punishment, it's about signals. When you choose better carbs, more stable fats, smarter drinks, and enough protein, your body stops fighting you. Hunger quiets down, cravings lose their grip, and fat loss becomes something you can actually sustain. This is how I want you thinking about your health. Not extremes, not trends, but physiology that works in real life. If this helped you understand your body even a little better, share this video with someone who's stuck and frustrated. And if you want more clear, practical medical education like this, subscribe to the channel. Stay informed, stay consistent, and take care of your health.